We have this amazing and rich narrative in Battletech, and from the perspective of a war game, pulling this in from a war game as opposed to, say, a role-playing game or a living narrative-type game, what we see traditionally in war games, a great example would be like Warhammer 40,000, where you analyze these units. You have your various army, your various factions, and certain units, while they have a history, they have a background because they have to plug into the game, just based on the rules. Some units are better than others. Certain units are more efficient than others. We talk about this idea of a war game being a simulation, and the rules are simulating that reality. Once you plug in units, certain units do a better job of taking advantage of those rules than others. And in the case of something like Warhammer 40K, the various units are always shifting. New models are introduced. Power level is up and down because the idea is to sell miniatures. Games Workshop to sell those miniatures. Compare that to Battletech. I'm going to put Alpha Strike aside for a moment. But Battletech, and I'm glad it's called Battletech as opposed to Classic Battletech, the rules are more or less intact and have been consistent during the entire inception of the game. Things were added on, bolted on in terms of the clans and other pieces of technology as it evolved real time. But what this has left us with is a static rule base, lots and lots of mechs that need to be evaluated and need to be understood within that narrative. You flip through the technical manuals, and certain mechs just pop out. We're going to look at light mechs. This is what kind of brought this idea of the narrative up. You look at the Jenner. Fantastic all-around machine. Carries more weapons than some medium mechs. Doesn't have the armor, but it has the speed. I mean, a very, very potent mech. Then you have solid mechs like the Spider. Good speed, jump capability, 2 medium lasers. In the inner sphere, medium lasers are one of the best weapons in the game, simply based on tonnage, damage, range, and heat. It's like in that mid-zone for all of them. So you look at the meta, you look at the rules of what you're trying to do in Battletech, certain machines are going to rise to the top. They're just brutally efficient. Then there's a second tier of machines, which are good, are potent, like the Warhammer, the Thunderbolt, the Orion. But you need to manage heat, you need to manage different weapon brackets, you have ammunition, but kind of standard battle mechs, easy to understand. Then we move to this next tier of mechs. I like to call them specialized mechs. Some of them might be very, very good, like the Firestarter is a very, very good and efficient mech. Almost too good with its weapons. What I've noticed on a sidebar with the Firestarter, and we've looked at this in the archive, Firestarter wants to play like a medium mech. It's really very, very easy, very, very fast to forget that you have a light mech. And you play the Firestarter, you can get yourself in a lot of trouble. But the Firestarter, the Vulcan, we see these specialized mechs for a very, very specific role. If you can get them in that role, they excel. I mean, they're a lot of fun. They're there for the lulls. Outside of that role, a Vulcan fighting in the desert, not really going to happen. A Vulcan fighting in the desert against mechs and no vehicles, fortifications, or infantry, you're going to have some challenges. But that's okay. These are specialized mechs. Then there's this final classification of mechs, and I want to push this out for the new players to the game, the Ost Scout. And I have the Ost Scout in my collection, but you have mechs in the game that you're scratching your head from that rules perspective, from that meta perspective, and you're saying, why would I ever take this machine? I mean, the Ost Scout, puny weapons, good speed, but in terms of light mechs, the battle value up or down a little bit, there are vastly superior machines. One could argue a Locust variant is better than the Ost Scout. But in reading the narrative, this is what you're going to see in Battletech. Battletech started with the narrative first, miniatures and models second. The business model was never intended, compared to Games Workshop, or another great game that I love to play, X-Wing Miniatures, right? Fantastic. Selling the models. So you need this power creep. You need this up and down. You need to create units that are so brutally efficient, everyone wants to go out and drop $300, $400, $500. Battletech started with the rules first, the narrative, and it built from there. So you see certain machines that, yes, on paper, If I break it down and crunch it on the numbers, they're not very good. But there's a reason to take them for that narrative. Now, the Ost Scout, if you look through the tech manuals, it has a vast array of information gathering capabilities, sensors, a very, very potent and valuable recon mech. So if you're allowing yourself to explore Battletech from that perspective, custom missions, you buy an Ost Scout because you're going to send it to literally scout through, and maybe sitting down with your friends to craft a mission specific to that, right? There's this lost tech that's been discovered, or rumored lost tech in this area, and you're sending out the Ost Scout to recon it. You have to hit up these 6 or 7 physical points, take a scan on the hex map, and your opponent is trying to stop you from doing that. So it's not so much a kill everybody mission, but more of a mission like, hey, can you stop my mech? We see this with the Cyclops. I mean, Cyclops is an okay assault mech, but there are certainly better assault mechs. But the idea behind the Cyclops is that command and control function in terms of battlefield command, that 3K targeting computer and acquisition computer to manage the battlefield. So we see in the narrative, these machines make perfect sense because certain mechs were made to fight, other mechs were made to take advantage of battlefield conditions. I say this as a duality. So if you're new to Battletech and you're just looking at the mech sheets and not necessarily the tech manuals, you are going to come across certain mechs that you're like, okay, read the tech manuals, it makes sense. Then it's up to you to decide, well, personally, and this is a question I ask, how do you play Battletech? No right or wrong answer. If you primarily go head-to-head and blow things up, and that's how a lot of the games that I play, then you want to look at pure efficiency. But if you're open to some custom missions, if you're open to sitting down with who you're playing Battletech with, a great way to start this is to literally sit down with your collection, sit down with their collection, look at your hex maps, or if you're playing with 3D terrain, look at that, and be like, what stands out? What would be like a cool mission to play? We played one mission using a mobile HQ model, and that mobile HQ model had broken down on the table. And that's a rare prize to take just in the tech, to capture the command structure, to capture the commander of the battlefield. So we created a mission where one person was defending that mobile HQ, and I was trying to grab it. And within X number of hexes, I mean, this is a valuable prize. Within, I think it was 8 hexes, I would not shoot. I was, as the attacker, not able to shoot targets within those 8 hexes, simply because I can't risk a stray shot hitting that mobile HQ and damaging it. But my opponent could. So they use that to that advantage. I have the advantage knowing that I'm going to have to go in. So I'm going to be brawling it out. So we looked at some different scenarios to play. If you can approach Battletech from that perspective, all of a sudden the game opens up to tremendous opportunities, tremendous fun, because there are this fourth level, this fourth classification of mechs, of things that are very, very interesting, unique, and fun to play from the tech manual perspective.